Alright, welcome back guys. So in the previous video I did some rough shaping of the board. I showed you how to shape the rails, did the rail bands, and then roughly shaped out the board. I've left it a little thicker just so that when I chamber it and I put it back together, if I have any variances, I'll have a little extra lumber that I can just kind of touch up with the belt sander or the orbital sander. So before we chamber the board, we need to do a few quick little things. I've made a few marks on the board in the midpoint, in the front, and in the rear, just so that when I reassemble the board it'll be easy to put back together. I have some alignment marks basically. On the rear I've also marked out where my fin boxes are going to go. I did some rough fin placement. I'm going to have to remark that later, but that's so that I know where my fin boxes will go, so I have a little extra wood that I can leave there. That way I'm not affecting the structural integrity of the board. So in this video we're going to snap the board in half, and then we're going to take the time to chamber it all out and then glue it back together. I'm going to try to do this all in the same weekend. That way when you take this apart there could be a chance of warping. The humidity right now is low, but we're expecting some wet snow right now, so it could increase the humidity and increase the chance of warping as well. Alright, I'm going to set up a jig to take this board apart because, as you remember previously, I had glued the middle part of it together, whereas the rest of the board is screwed together, and that will allow me access to the screws. So I'm going to snap the board in half now at that glue seam. Also, I wanted to mention just real quickly, I like keeping a record of all the surfboards that I've built in the past. I've mentioned this previously in my other videos, but I thought I'd reiterate it in this video for any of you new subscribers or viewers. So in here I keep the deck marks that I made for when I shaped the rails, the rough dimensions of the board, the shape of the board, the rocker template, the shape of the bottom of the board, the amount of resin that I used and how much fiberglass I used on the board, the glassing schedule, all that stuff that'll come later. But I like keeping it all in here, and that way I have a reference point, especially for the amount of resin that I use when I laminate the board and do the hot coat, gloss coat. I have a real good baseline of how much resin and material that I use. So this is just really handy. Definitely a really great tip. I highly recommend doing this because your memory will fail you over time. So you can try going by memory, but definitely write things down. The other thing is, you know what I really like about doing projects like this is it gives me a reason or an excuse to go out and buy new tools. Previously my belt sander had died because I just had a cheap one, and I upgraded to this beast. This is a Makita 9924. This thing's been around forever. I think I might do a review on this actually. That's how well this works. It'll give your arm a workout too. It's 10 pounds I believe, but yeah, great excuse to go out and buy tools. So it took a few minutes just to mark out the rear of the board before I snap it in half. That way I know where I'm going to be routing holes for these fin boxes, and that way I make sure I leave a little extra wood in the blank at those areas so I don't create any structural integrity issues later. So they're just roughly marked out for now. I will have to remark them later because I'm going to still do a little sanding once I chamber the board and then glue it all back together. So I got a few of the chambers cut out. This was my first one. It's a little rough. The second one here is really nice. See how nice and smooth this got cut out? And it's nice and even on both sides. I'm just going to clean this one up here, and any mistakes and stuff that I make, I can clean up with my die grinder. I'm going to use this guy here. This is called a die grinder. And I got a nice wood chewing bit on this. So I have the first two pieces of the blank chambered. Well, actually, one is actually the stringer. And then one piece of the actual blank itself. And now I'm going to glue it back, start gluing it back together. So that way it minimizes the warping. The type of glue I'm going to use, ideally you probably would use like an epoxy or a polyurethane glue. I'm going to use this outdoor weatherproof wood glue. I've tested this and it works pretty well. The main reason why I'm not going to use a polyurethane glue is because since I'm going to be epoxying this board anyway, I'm going to be laminating it and then doing a hot coat, gloss coat. It's going to be very low risk that any water is going to get inside the board, because I'll have bigger issues if that happens anyway. But this stuff here, I've tested it and it works really well when it gets wet. Plus, the nice stuff about this, there's only a 1 hour setup time on this, and I can start gluing other pieces together. Well, I think I used every clamp that I own on this so far. It's not pretty, but it works. First one glued together. Only a whole bunch more to go. I can't remember if I mentioned this, but I'm using a combination square to mark how thick the thickness of the chambers will be. And I'm gonna go, or the skin of the board, and I'm gonna go 1/4 of an inch, should be plenty. I could probably even go a bit thinner, but I'm gonna do a little sanding afterwards, so I wanna try to keep this board as light as possible. If you do a lot of woodworking, if you have a marking gauge, that would be ideal too. What I've done with the chambers is I've made them all 1 foot apart. No real reason, I just thought 1 foot was a good amount for the structural integrity. I found drilling out all 4 corners using a nice big spade bit is really great for making it easy to cut these out, because then I can just basically cut straight lines on the chambers, so that really makes it easy. And last thing, I'm also staggering the chambers between each one of these pieces of the board. As you can see here, this part here is the stringer, but it's going to be the same on all the other ones. And then this is one of the main pieces of the board, and I've staggered the chambers. This is for two reasons. Number one, it's for structural integrity, and number two, it's also for letting air flow between each chamber, so the whole board will be one effective air chamber. And that'll make venting the board really easy with just one vent. Also, I wanted to show you really quickly this spade bit. This thing really is awesome. It helps reduce hand fatigue. It's got this screw point which pulls the bit through as you're drilling. And it's got super sharp edges on the side that protrude down and make a really nice clean cut when you're drilling out larger holes. This one's made by Bosch, and I think it's called the Speed Demon or something like that. I'll post a link in the description below where I got these on Amazon, and you can get these at Home Depot, and they're relatively inexpensive and totally worth it. Here I'm using ratchet straps to clamp together the board as I'm gluing it, because I'm getting to the point where it's so wide that my regular clamps, I only have a handful of clamps, they're not wide enough, so I only have 2 wide clamps, so the rest I'm just using ratchet straps to clamp it together with 2 boards. Works awesome. I've been doing this for years when I'm clamping together even foam surfboard blanks. Now that I have the bulk of the surfboard chambered, the main part of the board, the very edge, the very rail of the board, I've marked, and now I'm going to router out this part here because I can't use a jigsaw to cut all the way through, obviously. So I think I'll use a router, and that will make that nice and easy. All right, last piece. I marked out back here where I possibly would want the vents to go when I vent this later. Still to be determined, but at least I know that underneath this air pocket is contiguous throughout the whole board, within all the chambers. So I think I'll end the video here. I have to say, I am super happy with how well this board is coming along. It's coming along a lot better than I thought it would. I thought I'd run into more problems, but I haven't, which is great. So I'm really happy with the results so far. So give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, bye for now.